The war room buzzed with quiet efficiency as holographic displays showed the burning remains of yet another conquered world. Smoke still rose from the crystal spires of Proxima 7, their beautiful cities now reduced to ash and rubble. The EU, Dominion had claimed another victory, their 164th in a row. Admiral Vorthak moved between the glowing screens with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. His scaled hands traced patterns in the air, calling up star charts and battle reports. Each display told the same story, complete and total victory over every species they had encountered. 300 years of conquest had made the Dominion the most feared force in the galaxy. The bridge of the massive flagship stretched out like a cathedral of war. Thousands of officers worked at their stations, their movements precise and practiced. They had done this so many times that conquering entire civilizations had become routine. Load the weapons, destroy the defenses, accept the surrender, move on to the next target. Admiral, the final resistance on Proxima 7 has been eliminated, reported Captain Grendel, his voice carrying no emotion. The death of billions meant nothing to him anymore. It was just another number in their endless tally of victories. Vorthak nodded without looking up from his charts. The Proximans had lasted longer than most, almost 6 days of fighting before their crystal weapons finally ran out of power. Their cities had been beautiful once, filled with beings of living light who had created art from pure energy. Now they were slaves, the lucky ones anyway. The rest were simply gone. Prepare the fleet for the next jump, Vorthak ordered. His mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his species. I want to review our next target before we move. The holographic display shifted, showing a small yellow star system on the outer edge of the galaxy. The third planet from the star glowed blue and green, covered in water and continents. Primitive radio signals leaked from its surface, along with the heat signatures of cities and the exhaust trails of crude spacecraft. The species calls itself human, Grendel said, pulling up the intelligence files. They have achieved basic spaceflight but have not yet left their home system. Their technology level is approximately 2,000 years behind standard galactic civilization. Vorthak studied the data with growing amusement. The humans still used chemical rockets to reach their moon. Their most powerful weapons were crude, nuclear devices that would barely scratch the paint on a Dominion warship. They fought wars among themselves using projectile weapons and explosive devices. How many major population centers? Vorthak asked. Approximately 300 cities with populations over 1 million. Their largest concentration has nearly 20 million inhabitants. They appear to be divided into multiple nation-states that frequently engage in warfare with each other. This made Vorthak's mandibles click even faster. A divided species was always easier to conquer. They would spend precious time arguing among themselves instead of mounting a unified defense. By the time they realized the scope of the threat, it would be far too late. Military capabilities? Minimal. Their largest war vessels operate on the planet's oceans and are powered by combustion engines. They have no energy shields, no plasma, weapons, no faster-than-light capability. Our preliminary scans detected no orbital defense platforms or void-capable warships. The Admiral moved to another display showing the human homeworld in detail. Cities sprawled across the continents, connected by primitive transportation networks. Lights twinkled on the night side, marking population centers that would soon be under Dominion control. How long for complete subjugation? Vorthak asked. The War Council estimates 3 solar rotations, Admiral. Possibly less if they surrender quickly once they see the fleet. 3 days. Vorthak had conquered star systems with advanced technology and unified planetary governments in 3 days. This primitive world would likely fall in hours once the bombardment began. Their crude weapons would be useless against Dominion shields, and their divided governments would collapse into chaos. Very well. Signal the fleet. We jump to the human system in 2 rotations. As Grendel moved away to relay the orders, Vorthak allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Victory number 165 would be the easiest yet. The humans would serve as an example to other primitive species about the futility of resistance. Their world would be stripped of resources to fuel the Dominion's expansion, and their people would join the ranks of slaves that kept the empire running. The preparation began immediately. 800 warships prepared for the jump to human space, their weapons charged and their crews ready for another routine conquest. Supply ships loaded with restraining devices and processing equipment for the inevitable prisoners. Transport vessels prepared to carry away anything of value from the soon-to-be-conquered world. In his private quarters, Vorthak reviewed the files on previous conquests. Each species had thought they could resist. The energy beings of Altair, Prime had wielded the power of stars themselves. The machine intelligences of the Nexus cluster had calculated 1,000,000 battle scenarios. The warrior clans of Beta Rigel had fought with a savagery that impressed even Dominion veterans. All had fallen in the end. All had joined the Empire as slaves or been eliminated entirely. The humans would be no different, despite their pretty, blue world and their amusing primitive technology. The jump coordinates were locked in. The fleet was ready. In just over a day, they would emerge in human space and begin the process that had worked flawlessly for 3 centuries. Overwhelming force, devastating bombardment, complete surrender. Vorthak settled into his command chair as the ship's engines began the complex process of folding space-time. Soon he would be able to add another victory to his record, another species to the long list of the conquered. The humans had no idea what was coming for them. As the Dominion fleet prepared to tear a hole in reality itself, Admiral Vorthak made a final log entry. Fleet log, stardate 4.1732. Preparing to engage the species known as humans. Expected resistance, minimal. Expected casualties, none. Expected outcome, complete victory within 72 standard hours. The stars began to blur as space folded around them. Victory number 165 was about to begin. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, warning lights flashed red throughout the underground facility. The massive screens that lined the walls showed readings that should have been impossible. Gravitational distortions on a scale that defied everything humanity thought it knew about physics. Lieutenant Rivers felt his coffee cup vibrate against the metal desk as seismic sensors picked up something that wasn't quite an earthquake. The tremors came in regular waves, like footsteps of giants walking across the fabric of space itself. He had been monitoring deep space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like the readings streaming across his screens. "Tom, we need you in the main briefing room right now," came the voice over the intercom. Director Walsh sounded stressed, which was unusual. Rivers had never seen her rattled by anything, not even during the asteroid scare of 2019 or the solar storm warnings that had kept them underground for 3 weeks. He made his way through corridors carved from solid rock, past blast doors that could withstand direct nuclear hits. The facility officially didn't exist, buried so deep that even the most powerful bunker-buster weapons couldn't reach it. To the outside world, this was just another mountain in the Colorado wilderness. The briefing room was packed with personnel Rivers had never seen before. Men and women in military uniforms without any identifying patches, scientists with security clearances so high their names didn't appear in any database, and technical specialists whose job descriptions were classified above his pay grade. Director. Walsh stood at the front of the room, her face pale but determined. Behind her, a massive display showed the solar system with 800 red dots positioned around Earth's orbit. Each dot was larger than the biggest structure humanity had ever built. "Ladies and gentlemen, first contact has been initiated," Walsh announced. "At 0347 this morning Eastern Standard Time, we detected massive spatial distortions consistent with faster-than-light travel. 800 unknown vessels, each approximately 5 kilometers in length, have taken up positions around our planet." The room erupted in whispered conversations, but Walsh continued without pause. "Based on their formation and energy signatures, we are looking at an invasion fleet. Their weapons are already powering up, and our deep space monitors indicate they are preparing for planetary bombardment." Rivers felt his stomach drop. This was the scenario they had all trained for, the possibility they had prepared for but never really believed would happen. The visitors weren't friendly explorers or curious scientists. They were conquerors, and Earth was their target. However, Walsh continued, her voice growing stronger. This is not a time for panic. This facility, and others like it around the globe, were built for exactly this moment. The technologies we have developed in secret for the past 70 years are about to be revealed. She pressed a button on her remote, and the display changed to show a map of Earth with dozens of hidden installations marked in green. Rivers counted, at least 50 sites he had never heard of, buried under mountains, hidden in ocean trenches, and concealed in polar ice. Project Shepard has been humanity's most classified program since 1947, Walsh explained. While the world above has been focused on conventional weapons and space exploration, we have been preparing for this day. Every crashed probe, every unexplained sighting, every piece of alien technology we could recover has been studied, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. The display shifted again, showing technical diagrams that looked more like science fiction than reality. Spacecraft that could bend space around themselves, weapons that could manipulate matter at the quantum level, and defensive systems that created holes in reality itself. The vessels observing us believe they are facing a primitive civilization, barely capable of reaching their own moon. Walsh continued. That belief will be their downfall. Tom, I need you to open a channel on frequency Omega-7. Rivers moved to a communications console that looked nothing like the equipment he was used to. The interface was sleek and intuitive, responding to his touch with displays that showed quantum entanglement networks spanning the globe. He input the frequency Walsh had specified and waited. This is Director Walsh to all Shepard installations worldwide. She spoke into the microphone. Authentication code Prometheus 77. The masquerade protocol is now terminated. Repeat. The masquerade is over. All sites are authorized to bring their systems online. Across the globe, the responses came back immediately. Underground facilities that had waited decades for this moment began powering up equipment that officially didn't exist. Fusion reactors that could power entire cities hummed to life. Weapon systems that could crack continents charged their exotic matter cores. Ships that had never seen sunlight prepared for their first and possibly last mission. Sir, called out a technician from across the room. We're getting energy signatures from the alien fleet. It looks like they're preparing to attack population centers. Walsh nodded grimly. Then it's time to show them what humanity has really been doing all these years. Tom, I want you to coordinate with the fleet commanders. Tell them to prepare for Operation Revelation. Rivers opened another channel, this one connecting him to commanders he had never met but whose existence had been whispered about in classified briefings. All fleet units, this is Omega Base. You are cleared for emergence. Repeat, you are cleared to emerge and engage. Far above them, in the vacuum of space between Earth and the Moon, reality began to shimmer. The alien invasion fleet, confident in their overwhelming superiority, was about to learn that some prey had teeth they never showed until it was time to bite. Rivers watched his screens as impossible energy signatures began appearing throughout the solar system. Humanity's true children were waking up, and they were hungry for a fight that had been 3 centuries in the making. The masquerade was over. The real war was about to begin. Space itself began to tear open like fabric ripping at the seams. Admiral Vorthak watched his tactical displays with growing confusion as impossible readings flooded his sensors. Where moments before, there had been empty vacuum around the primitive, human world, massive energy signatures now blazed like newborn stars. The first human vessel materialized without warning directly between the Dominion fleet and Earth's moon. Vorthak's trained eyes had seen thousands of ship designs across 3 centuries of conquest, but this craft defied every rule of engineering he knew. It was sleek where it should have been bulky, elegant where it should have been crude, and radiating power levels that made his instruments scream warnings. Report, Vorthak snapped at his sensor officer, his confidence shaken for the first time in decades. Unknown, Admiral. The vessel simply appeared. No engine signatures, no spatial distortion, no faster-than-light wake. It's as if it was always there and we just couldn't see it. Before Vorthak could respond, more ships began appearing. Throughout the battle space, 10 became 50, 50 became hundreds. Each human vessel looked different from the others, as if they had been built by separate civilizations rather than a single species. Some crackled with energy fields that bent light around them. Others seemed to phase in and out of existence. A few appeared to be made from materials that absorbed all light, creating holes in space itself. The bridge of the human vessel, Defiant, hummed with quiet activity as Captain Morgan reviewed the tactical situation. Her ship had been built in the hidden yards of Europa, constructed from alloys that existed in 11 dimensions and powered by controlled black holes the size of marbles. Around her, the crew worked with the calm precision of people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "Weapons status, Commander Blake," Morgan requested, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. "All systems green, Captain. Quantum disruptors are charged and locked onto priority targets. Gravitational cannons are online and ready for selective reality modification. The temporal anchors are holding us steady in this timeline." Morgan nodded, studying the massive alien fleet that surrounded Earth. Intelligence reports had described the Dominion as the galaxy's most successful conquerors, but looking at their formation, she could see why they had been so successful. They relied on overwhelming firepower and superior numbers, tactics that worked perfectly against civilizations that fought by conventional rules. Unfortunately for them, humanity had stopped following conventional rules sometime around 1950. "Communications. Open a channel to all Shepherd vessels," Morgan ordered. "Channel open, Captain. All ships, this is Morgan aboard the Defiant. Our guests have been studying us for several months, but I think it's time we introduced ourselves properly. Execute. Protocol 7 on my mark." Throughout the human fleet, exotic weapon systems that had never been tested in actual combat powered up for the first time. The results were immediately visible to both sides as space around Earth began to behave in ways that violated several fundamental laws of physics. Admiral Vorthak watched in horror as his forward squadron simply vanished. Not destroyed, not disabled, gone as if they had never existed. His sensors couldn't track whatever weapon had been used. Because it operated outside the normal 3 dimensions his equipment was designed to monitor. "Admiral, we're detecting massive power buildup from the human vessels," his tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "Energy levels are off the scale. Some of these readings are larger than our main reactor output." "Impossible," Vorthak snapped. "These are primitives. They fight with chemical explosives and metal projectiles." But even as he spoke, more Dominion ships began disappearing from his fleet roster. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were systematically dismantling a force that had conquered most of the known galaxy. The truth was finally being revealed. For over a century, humanity had been the galaxy's greatest students. Every crashed probe, every piece of alien technology, every hint of advanced physics had been captured, studied, and improved upon. While other species had developed along predictable paths, humans had leapfrogged entire stages of technological development by learning from their potential enemies. The Dominion used plasma weapons, so humanity had developed shields that turned plasma into harmless light. The invaders relied on faster-than-light drives, so human ships had learned to exist outside normal spacetime entirely. Where the aliens had energy weapons, humans had created armor that absorbed and redirected that energy back at the attackers. Captain Torres commanded the Stealth Squadron Ghost Division, 12 ships that existed in a state of quantum uncertainty until they chose to become real. Her target was the Dominion flagship, the massive vessel that had led 800 victories and never known defeat. "All Ghost ships, initiate phase transition," Torres ordered. "We're going hunting." Her squadron shifted from quantum possibility to hard reality, directly inside the Dominion defensive perimeter. The massive alien ships, designed to fight enemies that attacked from predictable directions, had no defense against vessels that could appear anywhere at any time. The Eternal Victory shuddered as weapons that shouldn't exist tore through shields that had deflected the firepower of dying stars. Vorthak felt his confidence crumble as his flagship, the most powerful vessel in Dominion space, began coming apart around him. "How is this possible?" Captain Grendel demanded, watching as more human ships materialized throughout their formation. "Our intelligence said they were primitives." But Vorthak was beginning to understand. The humans had let them think they were primitive. Every signal Earth had broadcast into space, every piece of technology they had displayed, Every military exercise they had conducted in view of alien sensors had been carefully crafted to present the image of a young, weak civilization. It had been the most successful deception in galactic history. "All ships, emergency retreat," Vorthak ordered, his pride finally broken by the reality of facing an enemy that had been preparing for this battle far longer than he had imagined. But retreat was no longer an option. The humans had surrounded the Dominion fleet with a web of exotic physics that made faster-than-light travel impossible. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was about to teach them why Earth had never been conquered, despite being visited by dozens of species. Over the decades, the galaxy's greatest predators had finally met something higher on the food chain. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. Battles implied two sides fighting with roughly equal capabilities, where victory could go to either participant. What happened in the space around Earth was a systematic demonstration of why humanity had survived and thrived in a galaxy full of predators while pretending to be helpless prey. The Dominion fleet, which had conquered 164 civilizations without ever losing a single engagement, found themselves completely outmatched by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. Their weapons, designed to overwhelm conventional defenses, had no effect against ships that could step outside reality whenever they chose. Commander Hayes piloted her fighter through what remained of the alien formation, her small craft dancing between massive warships that couldn't even target her properly. The human fighters were works of art compared to anything else in the galaxy, each one a masterpiece of engineering that bent the rules of physics in subtle but crucial ways. "Control, this is Lightning Squadron," Hayes reported, her voice calm despite flying through a battlefield that spanned millions of kilometers. "The big ships are trying to run, but they can't jump to hyperspace. Something is jamming their drives." That something was the Prometheus, Admiral Brooks' command vessel, which was projecting a field that locked local spacetime into a fixed configuration. The Dominion ships were trapped in normal space, forced to fight an enemy that could appear anywhere and strike from directions that didn't technically exist. Admiral Vorthak stood amid the ruins of his command bridge, watching his empire's greatest fleet die around him. Half his ships were gone, simply erased from existence by weapons that his sensors couldn't even detect. The others were being systematically hunted down by human vessels that fought like nothing he had ever encountered. "Sir, the humans are hailing us," his communications officer reported, blood running from a head wound caused by falling debris. "Put them through," Vorthak said, his voice hollow with defeat. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of a human command center. Admiral Brooks sat in a chair that looked deceptively simple, surrounded by displays showing tactical information that made Vorthak's advanced sensors look like primitive tools. "I am Admiral Brooks of the Terran Defense Force," the human said, his words translated by systems that somehow understood Dominion language perfectly. "I believe we should talk." "You have advanced technology," Vorthak admitted, his mandibles clicking in what his species recognized as surrender posture, "more advanced than our intelligence suggested. We are prepared to negotiate terms." Brooks leaned forward slightly, his expression serious, but not cruel. "Admiral, I don't think you understand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. This is a lesson." Around them, the battle continued as human ships demonstrated capabilities that redefined what warfare could be. The Retribution phased through 3 Dominion vessels simultaneously, its weapons firing in multiple dimensions to strike targets that thought they were safely hidden behind armor and shields. The cruiser Vengeance created a miniature black hole that consumed an entire enemy squadron before collapsing harmlessly into Hawking radiation. "For 3 centuries, your Dominion has swept across the galaxy, conquering everything in its path," Brooks continued. "You've enslaved species, destroyed civilizations, and turned conquest into an industrial process. You've done this because you believed you were the apex predators of space." The eternal victory shook again as another section was torn away by weapons that attacked the molecular bonds holding the hull together. Vorthak gripped his command chair as his flagship, which had led the conquest of dozens of star systems, continued to disintegrate around him. "You were wrong," Brooks said simply. Humanity has been watching the galaxy for over a century. We've studied every species, learned from every conflict, and prepared for the day when someone like you would come to Earth. We let you think we were weak because weakness is the perfect camouflage for strength. Captain Torres and her Ghost Division had moved beyond hit-and-run tactics to something more resembling an execution. Her ships materialized inside enemy vessels, fired their weapons from within the target's own hull, then phased out before the explosions could reach them. It was warfare reduced to its most efficient form, removing every unnecessary element until only perfect lethality remained. The species you've conquered over the past 300 years, Brooks continued as another wave of Dominion ships simply ceased to exist. Many of them are still alive, still enslaved in your labor camps, still suffering under your rule. We've been in contact with several resistance groups, and they're very interested in learning what happened to the fleet you sent to Earth. Vorthak felt something like fear, for the first time in his long military career. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were planning something larger. The defeat of his fleet was only the beginning. "What do you want?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Justice," Brooks replied. "Your empire has been built on the suffering of innocents. That ends today. The fleet you brought to conquer Earth will never return home. Your government will never learn what weapons we possess or how we acquired them. But the enslaved worlds will know that help is coming." The tactical display on the human command ship showed the final moments of the Dominion fleet. 800 vessels, the combined might of the galaxy's most successful military force, had been reduced to debris and fading energy signatures. Not a single human ship had been lost. Not a single human life had been sacrificed. It wasn't just victory. It was a demonstration that the Dominion had never been as powerful as they believed. They had conquered primitives and called themselves invincible, but they had never faced an enemy that understood the true nature of warfare. "Admiral," Brooks said as the last of the alien ships went dark, "you and your crew will be taken prisoner. You'll be well treated, fed, and given medical care, but you'll never see home again. Consider it a small payment against the debt your people owe the galaxy." The screen went dark, leaving Vorthak alone with the ruins of his pride and the knowledge that everything he had believed about his people's superiority had been an illusion. Somewhere in the galaxy, word would spread that the invincible Dominion fleet had simply vanished while attempting to conquer a primitive world. The psychological impact would be devastating to the empire that had built itself on a foundation of inevitable victory. As human ships began the process of securing prisoners and collecting intelligence from the wreckage, Earth continued its ancient routine. Cities went about their business unaware that the greatest space battle in galactic history had just been fought and won in the vacuum above their heads. The masquerade was over, but the real war was just beginning. The war room buried beneath Geneva looked nothing like the military command centers of old Earth. Holographic displays showed star systems across the galaxy, each one marked with data about populations, resources, and the level of Dominion control. Representatives from every major government sat around a table that hadn't existed in any official records until 3 hours ago. President Carter looked around at faces she was seeing for the first time, though some had been making decisions that affected her country for decades. Director Walsh was there, along with Admiral Brooks and several other military commanders whose names appeared in no public database. The secret leadership of humanity had finally stepped out of the shadows. "The immediate threat has been neutralized," Admiral Brooks reported, his uniform bearing insignia that didn't match any known military organization. "All 800 vessels of the Dominion fleet have been destroyed or captured. We've recovered their navigation data, communication codes, and tactical databases. For the first time in human history, we have a complete picture of our local galactic neighborhood." The holographic display zoomed out to show a 3-dimensional map of the spiral arm. Red zones marked Dominion territory, covering nearly a third of all inhabited star systems. Yellow indicated contested space where various species fought for independence. Green showed the handful of civilizations that had managed to remain free. "How many enslaved worlds are we looking at?" asked Prime Minister Chen, the elected leader of the Pan-Asian Federation and, apparently, one of the few government officials who had been read into humanity's true capabilities. At least 400 worlds with significant populations, replied Dr. Martinez, whose title was listed simply as Xenological Research Director. The Dominion's standard practice is to conquer a system, strip it of resources, and use the survivors as slave labor. Some worlds have been under their control for over 2 centuries. President Carter studied the data scrolling past her screen. Billions of sentient beings living in conditions that made Earth's worst historical atrocities look mild by comparison. Entire species reduced to nothing more than biological machinery to serve their conquerors' endless appetite for expansion. "What's our military assessment?" she asked. Admiral Brooks called up tactical displays showing Dominion fleet positions throughout their territory. The fleet they sent to Earth was their primary offensive force, roughly 60% of their total military capability. What remains is mostly garrison forces protecting key worlds and supply lines. Our analysis suggests we could defeat their remaining forces with minimal casualties. But, Director Walsh interjected, we need to consider the political implications. If we simply roll through Dominion space destroying everything in our path, we become the new conquerors. The liberated worlds might see us as just another imperial power. The room fell silent as the assembled leaders contemplated the magnitude of the decision before them. Humanity had successfully hidden its true nature for over a century, carefully, maintaining the illusion that Earth was a primitive, divided world, barely capable of reaching its own moon. That deception had served them well, allowing them to study and prepare while potential threats dismissed them as harmless. Now the masquerade was over, and with it came the responsibility of deciding what humanity would become in a galaxy that suddenly knew they existed. "We have a choice," Walsh continued. "We can withdraw back into secrecy, use our technology to hide Earth completely, and let the galaxy continue as it has. Or we can accept that our secret is out and decide what kind of neighbors we want to be." General Park, representing the Unified Korean Military Command, leaned forward. "The Dominion will eventually send scouts when their fleet doesn't return. Other hostile powers will want to know what happened. Our location is known now. Isolation is no longer an option." The display changed to show intelligence reports from across Dominion space. Rebellion movements that had been crushed dozens of times. Underground resistance groups that continued fighting despite hopeless odds. Entire populations waiting for something, anything, to give them hope that their oppression might end. "There's another factor," Dr. Martinez added quietly. "Our xenopsychology team has been analyzing Dominion communications for the past several hours. The psychological impact of losing their primary fleet to a primitive world will be enormous. Their entire social structure is built around the concept of inevitable victory. This defeat will cause massive instability throughout their empire." President Carter looked at the tactical displays showing human ships already moving through space with capabilities that made science fiction look primitive. Each vessel represented decades of secret research, hidden budgets, and technologies that officially didn't exist. The weight of keeping such secrets had been enormous, but it had been necessary for humanity's survival. "What are you recommending?" she asked. Admiral Brooks stood and activated a new display showing proposed fleet movements across dozens of star systems. "Operation Liberation. We make contact with resistance groups on enslaved worlds and coordinate simultaneous uprisings. Our ships provide tactical support while local populations do most of the actual fighting. We don't conquer, we liberate." "The psychological warfare aspect alone would be devastating to the Dominion," added Dr. Martinez. "Imagine the impact when word spreads that a species they considered primitive is freeing their slaves and dismantling their empire." The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Earth's hidden leadership had made their decision not just for their own world, but for hundreds of others scattered across the galaxy. The age of hiding in plain sight was over. The age of humanity as a galactic power had begun. Within hours, the message began broadcasting on every frequency that could reach across interstellar space. The transmission was simple, direct, and translated into every known language. "This is Earth. The Dominion fleet sent to conquer our world has been destroyed with no survivors. To every enslaved world, every oppressed people, every resistance. Fighter who has never given up hope, your liberation begins now. Humanity stands with the free peoples of the galaxy. Captain Reed sat in the command chair of the Liberation, humanity's newest warship, as her fleet prepared for the first faster-than-light journey in human history that wouldn't be hidden from the galaxy. Her destination was Kepler 442b, a world that had been under Dominion control for 87 years. Intelligence reports indicated a strong resistance movement and a population ready to fight for their freedom. Behind her on Earth, the masquerade continued in public. News reports spoke of unusual aurora displays and increased meteor activity, explaining away the light show that had been the destruction of an invasion fleet. Most of humanity would never know how close they had come to conquest, or that their species had just announced itself as the galaxy's newest major power. But in the deep places, in the hidden facilities, in the spaces between dimensions themselves, humanity's true nature was finally free to be revealed. The galaxy was about to learn that the species that had seemed weakest was actually its most dangerous predator. After 164 wins, they had sent their fleet to Earth. None returned. But from their defeat, something far greater was born. The knowledge that somewhere in the black between stars, humanity was watching, waiting, and protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The real war was just beginning, and this time, the good guys had the better weapons.